Down in my heart I have a joy, 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 joy. Down in my heart. Down in my heart to stay. And I'm so happy, so very happy. I have the love of Jesus in my heart. And I'm so happy, so very happy. I have the love of Jesus in my heart.
I'm so blessed and impacted by all parts of the program, and of course the message, a special impact. But the whole program, from the beginning, Vespers, up to I believe this morning, is going to be very special as well. And so while we are still thinking, and maybe you can share with me your thought about this and be documented right here. We will give the time to our speaker. Our special number is what you hear now in UK. It's what you hear from the sound of the waves. But go ahead, Pastor Dan Botabara. Thank you so much, and we hope that all of you will be warmed up, and he will be sharing with us. Look at him.
This will look weird in the video. Don't put this on YouTube or on my timeline. Yeah. In relationship to Pastor Idoso's comment earlier, some Americans, white Americans, have told me, "You Filipinos are weird. You're the only people you go very early outside, and Thanksgiving programs we do it at 5 o'clock in the morning." On my wedding, it was an American missionary who was officiating. He said, "This is the only time I have to wake up at 4, drive 2 hours to Manila to have a wedding at 6 o'clock in the morning. You guys are weird." And on the tennis court in Illinois, in the summertime, we would be so early at the tennis court because the Filipinos, we don't want the sun to be, we don't want to keep playing when the sun is up. We don't want to dark skin.
Want to get there.
And the Americans would come at 10 o'clock in the morning and they would say, do you folks ever sleep? Did you sleep here on the court? Okay. Well, usually when the speaker preaches, he's standing up and the audience is seated. Maybe this time we have one chair, the speaker will be seated and you will be standing. Is that okay? The chair is broken. He broke it because on purpose, because he knew I was going to say it. Well, let's go. Now let's go and be serious. This will be very short. The Shepherd's Psalm, Psalm 23, is complete as far as the needs of every Christian is concerned. But there is something that the Shepherd's Psalm did not say. By implication, it's there. But if you're not very careful, you won't find it. And so Jesus in the New Testament gave the parable of the lost sheep. And I believe that that was to supplement what he said, the pre-incarnate Christ, in the Shepherd's Psalm. And of course, you know, Luke chapter 15 is a series of 3 parables. The lost sheep, the lost coin, the lost son, the prodigal son. And Jesus gave these 3 parables in answer to the accusations of his enemies when they said, look at this man, he's associating with publicans and harlots and sinners. And Jesus answered them by giving them the parables. The parable of the lost sheep talks about 1 in 100. One was lost among 100. The shepherd goes out to look for it. The lost coin, 1 in 10. 10 coins, 1 was lost. The woman looked for it until she found it. The shepherd looked for the sheep until he found it. And then the parable of the prodigal son is 1 in 2, which eventually we know, as the parable ends, both of them were lost. The younger son and the older son. What is the issue Jesus is mentioning here? He knows human beings. He knows Christians like us. He knows Christians like me. There are times when we're happy in the Lord, but the cares of life take over us, and sometimes we get lost. Either we lose ourselves deliberately, or because of some problems that happen, we are forced to be lost without us wanting to be lost. And when we're lost, He doesn't stop. See, He doesn't say, I've done my best, I took you in, I provided all of your needs, now you got lost, that's up to you. No. He gets out of His comfort zone and looks for us when we are lost sheep. Let's concentrate on the lost sheep. The 99 were safe in the fold. The one lost sheep was gone. The shepherd goes out into the wilderness, and in some translations, in the highways and the byways, looking for the lost sheep. And he doesn't stop. He doesn't stop until he finds it. He finds it. When he finds it, what happens? He wakes up his neighbors and tells them, rejoice with me, for I have found my lost sheep. And Jesus said, in the same way, there's great joy in heaven over one soul that repents, than 99 who doesn't have the gift of repentance. There was an American preacher preaching in Thailand, in the jungle churches of Thailand. And there was a Thai translator who was translating for him. And he was preaching on the lost sheep. And the Thai people in the jungles have never seen a lamb or a sheep. They don't know anything about it. But they know a lot about elephants. And so the translator wanted to contextualize the translation. Whenever the American preacher said the lost sheep, he said the lost elephant. No, they didn't know anything about sheep. And so the story went on smoothly. Yeah, he said he went into the wilderness and all of this place. And the translator said he went into the swamps and the forest looking for the lost elephant. And then the English speaker said, and when he found his lost sheep, he was so happy. And the Thai preacher said, when he found his lost elephant, he was so happy. And then the English preacher said, and he takes the sheep and puts it on his shoulders. And the Thai preacher couldn't say anything. How do you put an elephant on your shoulders? Maybe he should have placed himself on the shoulders of the lost elephant. Well, let me tell you two stories of modern lost sheep where the shepherd looked for the sheep until he found it, and then he'll stop. Seems like you like stories. I do too. I do too. And so let me give you one short one and then a longer one, then we'll end. I was assigned in an island district in southern Luzon. We call it the Burian Island. We speak Cebuano there. They assigned me there because I could speak Cebuano. Until today, I can still preach in Cebuano. Any takers? I can preach in Cebuano right now. Okay. There were 12 churches in the island, and so I was the district pastor of the island. And one of the elders in the main church that I was staying in, I mean in the church where I had my residence, told me, when you visit that certain church, talk to the elder. He has a very important, interesting story to tell you. So I did. Look forward to the time when I will visit the church. And I did. I asked him, I was told that you have an interesting story to tell me. Oh, you heard about it, he said. And so he did. He told me about the story. He said, I was 18 years old. I was the youth leader of this church. My father was the head elder. One of the people in the church accused my father of something that he never did. There was a lot of trouble in the church. They were mistreating my father so much, I couldn't bear it. I left the church. And I said to myself, I'm never going to enter this church again. And he said, to show my defiance to the leadership of the church, I stayed in my own place, close to the church. You know, in the Philippines, many of the churches are surrounded by the houses of the members, right? So I stayed among the houses of the members, and for 25 years, he said, I defied all of them. Every Sabbath, I got my rooster, and as they were going to church, I would show them I have my rooster, and I would go to the cockfight arena. That's how I defied. 25 years, I did that. Got married, have my own children. Every Sabbath, I did that. Now, this happened for 25 years, he said. His house, actually, when he walked out into the road, you know, the mountain trail of the house, the road would fork into two, and about half a kilometer away to the right is the church. About 1 kilometer to the left is the cockfight arena. And so he said, for 25 years, I seldom missed a Sabbath when I went to the cockfight. After 25 years, he said. Now, of course, he said, in the meantime, there were people. The turnover of membership was fast. There were new members who were coming in. Several pastors have come and gone. They talked to me, but I was defiant. I hated the church. No one, no pastor, nobody could actually convince me to come back. And then one particular Sabbath, he said, I did the usual thing I did. What did he do? He took his rooster and showed everyone in the neighborhood, Adventist, that he was going to the cockfight. So he said, I followed the road into the fork of the road, and I turned left going to the cockfight arena. And after a while, I found myself in front of the church. I said, must be drunk last night. Maybe I have turned to the right instead of going to the left. So I traced my way back from the church back to the fork near my home and went on the left of the road. After a while, I found myself in front of the church again. He said, this cannot be happening. I was so drunk last night, he said. I went to the right again. So for the third time, he said, the second time this time, I followed, went back, traced my step back to the fork, and this time I wanted to be sure I was going to the left to the cockfight arena. And after a while, I found myself in front of the church. He said, I had goosebumps. Kinilabutan ako. This was not natural. Something is happening. And he said, I knew the Lord was calling me back to the church. From then on, got rid of my roosters, went back to church, and now for the past 2-3 years, I am the head elder of the church. God will do everything to get back the lost sheep. Amen? Second story. The year was 1982. I was pastor of the Pasay English Church. Pastor and Mrs. Rigoso were in Pasay at that time. Pastor Rigoso was in the union at that time. From time to time, I asked him to preach in my church. December 1982, I was preparing to go to my hometown, Legazpi City, to visit my parents. Now, 1982 was a very significant year for the Philippines, especially North Philippine Union mission at that time, because earlier that year, the then president of the General Conference, Neil Wilson, went to preach in Metro Manila. What did we call that program? Good News Total Health Expo 82. We started calling it Wilson Crusade, but we changed the name. So several months, I think in the summer, which was March and April, he preached there. Thousands were baptized. That Saturday, that December, every December I would usually visit my parents in Bicol and then come back to Pasay and spend the holidays with my family. And so 2 weeks before, I reserved a bus, a ticket on the bus, air-conditioned bus that goes from Manila to Bicol. And the buses were actually leaving every 30 minutes. And so I had my ticket going to an air-conditioned bus. I could not afford plane tickets at that time. And so air-conditioned bus was luxury for me. And when the night of my trip came, I was supposed to travel at night, the whole night. I went to the station about an hour before departure, went to the waiting room, and then I began to hear the call from the loudspeaker saying, all passengers for the 8:30 bus, go to gate so-and-so, number so-and-so, and wait for your bus, is going to go on time. My bus was 9 o'clock. I arrived at 8. The 8 o'clock bus left. The 8:30 bus left. I was assuming that by 5 minutes till 9, they would call us, passengers. 5 minutes till 9 came. There was no call on the loudspeaker. And 9 o'clock came, nobody called for the 9 o'clock bus. 9:05, 9:10, there was no call. So the passengers were looking at each other, what's going on? It's supposed to leave on time. And you know, December time in Manila, a lot of people go to the provinces, and so the buses were full. All of them were fully booked. Well, I had the courage. I went into the dispatcher, we called them the dispatcher, and asked, I said, sir, the 9 o'clock bus was supposed to have left earlier. What happened? Well, we're making some last minute maintenance. We want you to be safe, and so it will be a little bit late, but just wait, we'll be calling you. At 9:25, they called the passengers for the 9:30 bus. Nobody called the 9 o'clock bus yet. And so I went back to the dispatcher. He said, there's still some more maintenance being done. And so just wait. At 10 o'clock, the 10 o'clock bus passengers were called. The 9 o'clock bus was never called. Went to the dispatcher. And he said, don't tell anyone. That bus is not going. But I can put you as a waitlisted passenger on the midnight, the last trip for that day. The next trip would be 5 o'clock in the morning. You're number one. And so I said, what are the chances I can get into the bus? My time was limited. I needed to be in Bicol at that time. There were no other buses I could take. He said, it always happens that 1 or 2 passengers do not show. No show. And so you're number one, waitlisted. So you'll be the one to get into the bus. Well, I was frustrated, I was tired, I was prepared since 8 o'clock in that evening. But I said, well, there's no use in making a fuss, no use in having a tantrum here, temper tantrum. I'll just wait. Well, 10:30 bus came, 11 o'clock bus, 9 o'clock bus never came. Many of the passengers had left. Some of them were having a fight with the dispatcher and so on and so forth. I was at least secured, feeling that I am number one waitlisted on the last trip at the time. When they called for the last trip, I directly went into the gate, waited for the time when we would be allowed to go up into the bus. All the passengers went up. I talked to the conductor who was getting the passengers in. I said, you think I can get into the bus? He said, usually there's 1 or 2 who do not show, so you're number one. So Daniel Botabara, you're number one. Well, I'd like to admit to you that I committed some sin that night. I was praying. I don't suggest you do this. I said, Lord, if there's a passenger that will come up the bus and he'll be the last, please delay him. Put him through traffic. I'm glad I didn't say cause an accident. I didn't say that in my prayer. But I really wanted. I was desperate. I had to be on that bus. Okay. The passengers have gone up. There were several people waiting behind me, listed, the wait listed. Said to conductor, I said, is there one? There's one vacant seat. I'm waiting for the passenger. I began to pray again. Lord, don't let him get into the bus. Let it be me. Okay. Long story short, midnight came, on time, on the dot. He did not appear. The conductor said, please go up. You have the last seat on the bus. Follow the seat. The driver had actually warmed up the engine already. People were preparing themselves. I went to the number of the bus, somewhere to the back of the bus, the seat, sat down on it, reclined my chair, and then my backrest, and I began to sleep. At least I'm on the bus. I'm delayed, but I am on the bus. I don't know how long I slept. Around 2:30 in the morning, as the bus was rolling. It's so nice to be sleeping when the bus is rolling, right? Yeah, on a plane, I cannot sleep because you're how many 1,000 feet above? But on the bus, it's okay. Anything happens to the engine, they can park. On a plane, there's nowhere to park. Woke up at around 2:30, 3 o'clock to a strange sound that I could hear. It was not so loud, but loud enough for me to notice it and at least disturb it. And the sound went something like this. Somebody crying. Somebody was crying. I said, who could be crying at this time of night or morning, early morning? So I tried to listen more closely, tried to ignore it and go back to sleep. I could not. The sound would stop a little bit and then it would cry again. And then suddenly I noticed when my eyes became used to the darkness, it was somebody seated beside me. And for the first time I noticed the person seated beside me. It was a young woman. And her head was turned to the window, towards the window, and she was definitely crying. I said, what could be happening? I wanted to say something, but I did not want to disturb her. Wanted to give her the privacy, but she kept crying. Went on for another 10, 15 minutes. And then it hit me. I said, could it be that she's crying because perhaps in my sleep I did something wrong? Maybe my left hand wandered away from my lap and into hers. You know, these things can happen. There was no, what do you call this, armrest in between us. No armrest, and therefore it could be that I was sleeping and maybe I touched some part of her body. And you know, in the Philippines, if a woman complains in public, in a bus, the people will beat you up and then drop you into the train station, the police station. And the fear of having that happen overwhelmed me. I had to find out why she was crying. I wanted to be sure that it wasn't me that she was crying about. Well, I gathered my strength, my courage, and said very softly towards her, I said, Miss, okay ka ba? That's a stupid question to ask somebody who's crying. Are you all right? It's obvious she's not okay. And it's as if she didn't hear me. And so I rested on the thought that, oh, perhaps it's her own personal problem. Let me go back to sleep. I tried. She didn't even care to answer me, to respond. But I couldn't sleep because she kept crying. It would stop, she would cry. And then so I gathered my courage again and I said, Miss, are you all right? Is there anything I can do? And then she looked at me. And it's as if her eyes widened and she said something like, Ikaw, ikaw, you. Ako, patay na. Okay. I did something. I did something wrong. Yeah. I said, what do you mean You, isn't breakfast time now? Should we just go back, finish this next year? There you go again. There I go again. She said, you, she's staring at me as if trying to be sure who I was. And then she said the sweetest words I have heard that whole evening. You know, I started at 8, frustrated that my bus did not leave at 9 and all of this waiting. She said, you are Pastor Botabara, aren't you? I said, yes, I am. Do we know each other? She said, Pastor, don't you remember me? I said, I'm sorry, I don't. You baptized me 3 months ago. Really? After the crusade by Elder Wilson, we had the satellite meeting in your church in Pasay. You baptized me and I introduced my fiance to you, right? Then I remember. I said, what are you doing on this bus? You live in Antipolo. You don't have any relatives I know in Bicol. Why are you going to Bicol? Then she told me the story. She said, last week I was supposed to be married. My fiance and I were prepared for the wedding. Everything had been set. And then he was still playing. All I knew, I never knew, I didn't know, he was still playing around with other girls. And so, a couple of days before our wedding, the father of the girl he was messing around caught them together and he was forced to marry her. Napikot, sabi natin sa. And I'm so brokenhearted. That's why I'm crying. I said, where are you going right now? He said, you know, Pastor, since I was a child in our own barrio, there was a man who always liked me. He'd been courting me but because he's non-Adventist, I never really accepted him. And right now he's a first lieutenant in the Philippine Army. He's stationed in Bicol. And at the time when we parted ways after high school, he told me, he said, I know you don't like me. I know I'm not an Adventist. I'm an outsider, you know, in the time. But if ever you need me, if you get brokenhearted, the man told him, I will be there waiting for you. Romantic. You know this song by Freddie Fender? I'll be there before the next teardrop falls. Yeah. And now, because I am so brokenhearted, I think the only cure for me is to go and marry him. He's waiting for me in Bicol. Tomorrow morning, at 10 in the morning, his chaplain is going to marry us. I said, do you love him? No. She said, no. Why are you marrying her? I'm so brokenhearted. That's the only way my heart can be cured. In short, I began advising her, counseling her, telling her everything, that there's no future with a man who you don't love, especially who is a military guy in the Philippines. You know these people. They have a woman everywhere they go. And who knows what kind of disease is going to give you. Then, as we were talking, I realized why the 9 o'clock bus did not leave. Long story short, she got convinced. She got convinced. She said, okay, Pastor, can you at least take me home to your parents' house and I can rest today? It was already morning as we were talking. We were approaching Legazpi. And this evening I'm going to take another bus going back to Manila. No problem in taking a bus going back because people were going out to the provinces. And she said, this man knows that if I don't show up at 10 o'clock, then I have changed my mind. So she did. She stayed with my parents, stayed with us. That evening, she had a meal with us, and I brought her back to the station, and she took a bus back to Manila. 2 years after that, she got married to another Adventist young man. And today, she's a very happily married young Adventist woman with 2 beautiful children. You know where they are right now? somewhere in Arizona. The shepherd went out seeking for the lost sheep.